Hey everyone, Sylvain Perrier, co-host of Digital Grocer. It is so good to be with you today. In today's segment, I actually built two what I call very practical retail food applications for the industry using an AI framework that's actually backed onto OpenAI's ChatGPT. And I want to let you know that it took me approximately 30 to 40 minutes for each application. A lot of time in terms of understanding how to constrain the AI engine in terms of its input and what it's recommending back out to the users that would be using these applications. So I'm going to share with you how these two applications work. I'm also going to talk about more practically, if you're going to embark on these types of projects, what do you need to think of? How do you measure success? How do you learn from these things? And best of all, what you need to think through and be mindful of if you're going to take on these types of applications in your mobile environments, in your web environments. So let's start with the first app. It's called Meal Ideas. And it's essentially, I think we go all through this at some point or another because we're very busy or we've decided to kind of change our lifestyle. You really want us to start planning what you and your family may be eating throughout the week across the various meals. Now, when I built this, it was about the least amount of information a user would need to type, as well as be considerate of potentially dietary preferences, budget, and time constraints. And again, much like I said at the top of the segment, it was about really constraining the output of the AI engine, one, to minimize any potential negative outcome, but best of all, making sure that the user experience is rich. So let's go ahead and jump in, and I'm just going to put something, let's say keto diet. And maybe 2,500 calories per day, because we know, and it's scientifically proven, if you're in a caloric deficit, you could be potentially losing weight per day. So keto diet, 2,500 calories per day. Let's click the run button. And so what's happening is this is being fed into the engine, and the engine is returning a meal plan based on your caloric restrictions on a daily basis. So you can see a great example here is on Monday, breakfast. It's a keto breakfast bowl with scrambled eggs, avocado, and spinach. Now, I didn't go as far as programming this to kind of give you the measurements for each of the ingredients in your various meals, but I did build the copy process so a user could take this and move it into something else. They can download this as a PDF. And what I really liked when I built this, it was kind of cool. And this is how really you're teaching an engine is enabling the AI tech to come back and say, hey, by the way, here's some additional filters or additional items that are going to come back, refine the output of the engine. And this is essentially what is feeding the whole machine learning aspect of this. So an example is include more plant-based protein or add more of the varieties to the meal. So great example. So let's try another one. Let's say in this case here, I've decided to eat 2,000 calories per day. And I'm just going to type this up. I'm on a budget. Now, if you had pricing data in your engine, this would be really cool because you could actually, a person may say, I can only spend $150 a week on food, but not the case here. And I'm lactose intolerant. Let's see what happens. Very cool. So in this case here, the engine is actually recommending 2 daily snacks. And if you remember the meal plan from just before, that wasn't the case. It was not recommending at all any of the snacks. I think this is really, really, really cool. So let's jump to the second application. So second application, Recipe Maker. I think we've all found ourselves in this really interesting situation where sometimes, we have things in our pantry and our refrigerators and we're not sure what to make. We'll normally go to, in some cases, I would go to my old school paper cookbooks, go through the pages, find something. I might go to my preferred retailer's website, go through their recipes. Hopefully they have the tech built in where I can kind of put in my ingredients. Or most of the time, what majority of a lot of users do is they will go to Google and they will actually put in the list of ingredients that they have with the hopes that Google's going to return something that is relevant. Now, this is neat because if you have this in your existing web app or maybe in your application, you're actually could be capturing that input. You're providing that feature back out to your users where maybe normally they, like I said, would go to Google. So let's assume I have something, in my case, I have broccoli, and funny enough, I do love broccoli. I have white rice, soya sauce, because most of us, I would suspect, have this in our pantries buried somewhere. And let's say I have eggs. That's as much as I have. And let's see what happens when I hit run. Awesome. So it's giving you the first recipe here. It's called broccoli fried rice. Ingredients: the white rice, the broccoli, the eggs, vegetable oil, soya sauce, with all the instructions. And it's giving me a list of optional ingredients. Now, I tried to program something into the AI engine here that's kind of cool. I actually tried to have it recommend the closest grocery store to me where I could go buy additional ingredients. Now, the engine, when I kind of started to tune it, it didn't have the capability to feed it specific locations. I couldn't also restrict it to a certain brand. But again, takes a little bit more time. You can do these types of things with, in fact, what you're building. Now, let me talk about a little bit with you the things that you need to be mindful when you're building out these types of AI applications. One is you really want to set a time limit to your experiments. Are you going to be doing something for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days? Set that time limit. And the reason that you do that is it really forces you to create these gates and these opportunities to measure and to learn, which are fundamentally critical. And again, you want to understand what are your KPIs, your key performance indicators. It could be as simple as, one, how many people are using this? How much time are they spending on this? Two is, a third one could be fundamentally, is it providing value? And there are ways to measure that value. You can take these applications and embed them in an existing or a new web page that's on your website. You got to make sure that those web pages are fully instrumented. And so what does that mean? It's connected to Google Analytics, that you're able to measure certain things. Again, keeping in mind where your key performance indicators are. The beauty about when you're thinking of KPIs and you're starting to measure through Google Analytics or maybe some of the other tools that you're using, it will start to inform content for your marketing team. So if people are consistently coming back and typing in keto, high protein, paleo, diabetic, so on, that really starts to shift your understanding and who's the community of consumers that I'm really working for and I'm supporting, and help you kind of drive your content. You got to update your privacy policies. I think this is the one thing that in my conversations with a lot of CMOs and CIOs, it seems to be the last item on the list. It should be the first item in the list. Specifically, in my last video when I talked about that there's going to be AI legislation changes in a lot of the states today to understand what's going to be an impact. And for those of you out in California, you want to understand what does this mean and tied back to your CCPA obligations. Be upfront with your customers. If you're going to be deploying these types of applications, let them know. Tell them it's an experiment, that you want their feedback, and quite frankly, set up your surveys early on in the web page itself, that they can click a link and get access to that survey. They can provide not just feedback, but how do they feel when they're using an application? You may find that, quite frankly, you get 60% many people may say, I don't want nothing to do with AI. I'm just here to buy groceries. I just want to know what's on sale, and so on. So you know if this is going to be potentially a risk to you, to your brand, or is it just going to be a failed experiment? That's very critical. I like the concept of potentially asking for a loyalty card ID in terms of gating the use of these applications. It's not necessary, but being able to tie back the use of these applications to demographical data eventually helps you in an executive committee business setting with your leadership, where you will hear people say, well, AI technologies, that's just for the young people. Not the case. I'm not young, and I'm experimenting with AI. Maybe I'm a different breed, but fundamentally, I think understanding who's using your tech makes a lot of sense in terms of helping to drive your business decisions and your outcomes. The other thing is, depending on the engine that you're using, you want to start to understand the training aspect of that engine. The one thing I'm very fearful of is these engines are being taught by being deployed on the World Wide Web. So consuming content, or they're being fed URLs and so on. And Lord knows it could be private sets of data. I really don't know. I think there's going to be this aspect of potentially copyright infringement lawsuits that will come out and say, hey, by the way, the recipe or the meal plan that's been regurgitated was actually a meal plan that was designed and copyrighted as part of this web property. That's interesting. But be mindful of that. If you are working with OpenAI or Google, you want to start asking those questions today. What kind of indemnifications are you as a retailer being protected by your third-party provider? So that's part of your privacy statement. You want that at the top of your list. Who owns the data that's being inputted? Now, OpenAI makes that quite frankly clear. They own that input. It becomes their own proprietary data. This is where marketers have to pay attention. Those inputs are very rich. They are very rich in understanding what's working, what's not working, and also goes back to how you're going to drive your content. So very critical in this case here. You also want to start thinking through your metadata models and how could you, if these are successful, these applications, how do you want to further extend them? And you can, as you're measuring your KPIs, I think you'll get a sense of what success looks like. But what I mean by thinking about your metadata and your data models, where I really cut the development of these applications short was specific UPC codes, which means specific SKUs. Again, the example of the closest location for the recipe where I could buy additional ingredients was a Walmart. Not practical if this is on your website and you're a retailer. You want your closest stores to where the individual is located. So again, those referential models around the metadata and how do you expose them and make them available to the engine here is very critical. And we know today the industry still has a fundamental challenge with having really good practical product data. So now that data needs to be exposed to these engines to learn. So that's going to add another layer of complication to the whole aspect of using these engines that are all really fundamentally based on machine learning. Again, garbage in, garbage out, the better your data, the better the experience is going to be to the user. So you need to start thinking of that, but do not let it stop you from experimenting. Final recommendation, start small. Start with an internal team, 10, 20, 30, 40 people, maybe company-wide, on an intranet, on something that's gated. Be brave, be bold. That's super important. And you know what? You're not going to get perfection, and that's okay. But open your mind to learning. This is the fundamental difference when you're experimenting with technology like this. So I hope you enjoyed our segment. We'll make sure to have these links likely available to the people that are going to watch this video so they can kind of try out the applications. Do me a favor, when you watch this video, go ahead, smash the like button, share it with your colleagues, and ask us questions. Give us the feedback of what you think of these applications. How would you make them better for your own internal? And what are you thinking about experimenting with when it comes to AI technology? Where you see it applying in your business, and what are your concerns? This is how we learn as a community. It's been great chatting with you guys.